Welcome to our video set on optimizing your PC. In this video, we'll look at the advantages of using the MSConfig utility. In this video, I'm going to quickly talk you through a useful utility that's built into Windows called MSConfig. It's not immediately obvious how to access this utility, and it's not generally listed in the Programs menu. So what you want to do is go to the Start menu, choose Run, the Run option, and this box pops up, and then type in MSConfig and OK. And as you can see, it says System Configuration Utility. And there are a number of options you can choose from. I'm just going to focus on one particular part of this utility, which I find very useful. We've sort of touched on this previously when talking about services, but this utility makes it even easier. Actually, a lot easier. If you go to the Startup tab, you can choose which software runs in the background and should start automatically. And by default, everything here is ticked generally. Then you can go through it. For example, I've decided that for a number of these, I don't want them to start automatically, because again, if they start automatically, it's something more for your computer to do in the background. So it's using its processor more, and it's also using more memory, and all of this is cumulative, and a lot of these are actually quite unnecessary. For example, I decided I don't need Acrobat Assistant to run automatically, so I disabled that. I don't really use Acrobat enough to justify having a dedicated piece of software running constantly in the background. And True Image Monitor, I don't need that. True Image allows you to make snapshots of your hard drive, but I don't need something running constantly regarding that because I only use it every couple of weeks or so. And just SCED, JU, and SCED for schedule. If we pull this over, we can see more about exactly where it's going to. And if you can recognize what it's trying to do, that gives you more information about whether it's a good idea to let it start up automatically or not. This has to do with Java, and I don't really use Java at all. And if you aren't familiar with it, then just leave it as a default option if you want. But I know I don't use Java much, so I've disabled that. Then QuickTime. I don't use QuickTime much at all, so I've disabled that. And NeroCheck. Nero is software that allows you to create CDs and DVDs, and I don't need software like that running in the background constantly, so I've disabled that. And I don't use iTunes. You can't get QuickTime these days without getting iTunes as well, it seems, but I don't use iTunes, so I don't need the iTunes helper. Okay, there's this one. If you look at it, you wouldn't know immediately what it is, but if you look at the address where it's going to, you see that it's Install Shield. Install Shield is a piece of software that helps you install new software. But how often do you install new software? So you don't really need this utility running constantly, so you probably want to disable that, because it's actually quite an intrusive piece of software. Surprising for something you really don't do that often. So I suggest you disable that. And this one, actually it has truncated folder names, but it's actually going to the same place. Program Files, Common Files, Install Shield again. So I don't want that one either. Then DSL Agent. This one appears to be part of a driver for an older modem that I no longer use. So I've disabled that because I don't use that modem anymore. And I don't actually use AVG security software anymore either, so I disabled that. I don't think I've ever used Adobe Photo Album Starter Edition, so I disabled that. And okay, I've scrolled up to the top, and here, Timeout Basically, it's monitoring software, and again, it's true image, and I don't need it running constantly, so I disabled that. This one is again true image. The actual name of the company is Acronis, so I disabled that, and the rest of these I left enabled. Some of these I don't recognize. You could probably find out what all of these are by doing an online search for the file name. For example, here, ctfmon.exe. Anything that's in the Windows System folder is often quite important, so disable that at your peril. Do be careful to do a thorough search online before deciding. I left that enabled. Then Adobe Reader. Okay, I could probably disable that. Then Zone Alarm. You definitely want a firewall enabled. And Sound Manager, I think that's this piece of software here. That's fine, so I left that enabled. Windows Defender. I left that running in the background. I don't recognize this, but I left it enabled. I could probably do a search if I really want to decide whether I should disable it or not. So OK that, and exit without restart. So just by doing that, by using MSConfig and then restarting, if nothing goes wrong with your computer, everything's fine, and you've then freed up processing power, you've freed up memory, and it just helps your computer run that much more smoothly, and it only needs to take a couple of minutes to set all that up.